Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with a spectacular disc of two contemporary cello concertos. It's this one. It has a name. It's called Transitions. I have no idea why they call it that. I don't know who's transiting to what or what's going on and why they're transitioning and I have no idea. But what we have here is the first cello concerti, two of them, of Nikolai Kapustin, yay! And Alfred Schnittke, yay! I mean, two amazing works, spectacularly played. I mean, fabulously played, with unbelievable guts and conviction by Eckart Runge, cello. Boy, is he hot. He's a terrific cellist. And he's accompanied by the Berlin Radio Symphony Orchestra under Frank Strobel. This is just such a marvelous disc. It's on Capriccio. You can see the Capriccio logo there. I love this label. I mean, I hope you do too. They have got so much marvelous repertoire. Usually extremely well recorded. I mean, they have access to like Austrian radio and some of that stuff. And like everybody does, it's all sort of German radio and, radio, these wonderful orchestras and conductors, and they can do anything they want with contemporary repertoire. And oh my goodness, it's just marvelous. I look forward to everything that I'm going to hear, even when I don't like it. As I didn't particularly like, Dochnani's The Veil of Pierrot, the world's dullest, dreariest ballet. But never mind, they do it, and they do it well, and this is extraordinary. Now, let's start with Kapustin. You may recall, back in the day, that a Kapustin disc on this very label, piano music, piano concerti, and other orchestral works in his chamber symphony, was my 2021 Disc of the Year. And for good reason, because Kapustin is the great find of the past 5 or 10 years. I really believe that. I think the guy was just a genius, a master, with a completely original voice. And his music is just extraordinary. I haven't heard anything that I don't enjoy. And this cello concerto is no exception. It is orchestral jazz, as we know by now with Kapustin. You've got a nice orchestra, a trap set, doing chunk, 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 cha, 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 choo, cha, cha, cha. Oh, it's just marvelous. And it's in 3 movements, and the orchestration is exquisite, and the tunes are just wonderful. It's so winsome and lovely, and it's just sublime. I don't usually use the word sublime. I actually grew up thinking it meant underneath lime. Get it? Sublime. I had no idea what, I guess it comes from like sublimate. That word is there too. I don't know. In German, it's erhabene. They always know what it means in German because German has lots of words like that. But for me, I'm not a sublime kind of guy. This is sublime. Trust me, it's amazing, absolutely amazing. And I'm going to play you a sample. Yes, we can do samples from Capriccio, even better. So here is a little bit of the first movement, just a bit of the first movement from the Allegro part. It has sort of a long sort of moody introduction, and then the cello leads off as an accompaniment to the principal thematic material, which you've heard somewhat exposed in the introduction, a la the first movement of Brahms' First, for example. And then it comes back, and just the tunes are good, and the orchestration's amazing, and you just can't stop listening to it. It's phenomenal. The whole piece, by the way, it's 24, 25 minutes long. It's just delightful. Why, oh, why isn't this played? Oh, why? Here is a bit of the first movement. So that was Eckart Runge with the Berlin Radio Symphony Orchestra under Frank Strobel in the first cello concerto, pardon me, there's only one of them, of Nikolai Kapustin. He actually wrote two, and the second has already been recorded. It was recorded on Italian Decca, on a disc coupled with Piazzolla stuff, and maybe we'll talk about that sometime, but I got to be able to play you bits of it, because I've said this before, the only way that a composer who is unfamiliar breaks into the repertoire is through repetition. And you've got to be able to hear the music, and you've got to repeat the music, and you've got to keep his name out there. And Kapustin is one of those names I intend to keep out there until the rest of the universe soaks it in and does something with him. He was actually also originally Ukrainian, so that's kind of topical today these days, although he spent most of his life in Moscow. But he is just an extraordinary musical voice. Now, let's talk about Schnittke, who people know about somewhat better. Schnittke, as you may know, spent a lot of his career doing things like film music and, commission stuff. And then he started to find his voice, which was this polystylistic sort of Ivesian collage admixture thing with more sort of pointed references to the European historical musical tradition. But then he had very poor health, and he had a series of strokes, which progressively paralyzed him, and heart attacks. And I was very, very ill. When I met him in Bergen, I was amazed he could travel at all. I really was. He could barely move. He was ashen and stony faced, and it was terrible. It really was. I felt very badly for him. But he kept writing music. He continued. After one of his major strokes, he started to recover, and he wrote his first cello concerto. This is a major, major work. It's a big work. It's about 45 minutes long in 4 movements, and it progresses from this sort of elegiac, alternating as elegiac with, nobody could write a horripilating climax like Schnittke could. Nobody, really, honestly. Although most of the music is quite slow, that 45 minutes, there's really only a couple, 5 or 10 minutes of quick music. You never get bored because some of it is just so scary. You could write horror movie music. That's what he did. A lot of his music is horror movie music, and it's wonderful horror movie music. Let me give you a sample, just the first horripilating climax. Horripilation number 1. The cello is, sort of doing a threnody thing, and then all of a sudden, bwang, all hell breaks loose. And so it keeps you on your toes. I have to tell you, it really, really does. Even though it goes on for a long time, and a lot of it's kind of slow and subdued. It's not for very long, and you never know after that first time when the creature is going to strike or dart out from behind a doorway. It's very suspenseful, and that's what keeps your attention engaged. And the orchestration is fascinating. It's got like a harpsichord sort of clanging in the background, doing nothing that harpsichords are supposed to do. It's just fascinating instrumentally. And, it can be as dissonant as anything you've ever heard in your life. Then all of a sudden you get pure harmony and nasty, threatening, Godzilla-like brass and percussion. And the cello writing is extraordinary. Eckart Runge deserves all the credit in the world for sustaining this piece. It's just such an intense piece of music. And you've got to maintain that for 45 minutes. It doesn't let you rest. It really doesn't. So let's listen to the first horripilating climax. Here you go. Now that climax, which scares the living daylights out of me, I don't know about you, that thing will recur in one way or another at various spots throughout the work, particularly at the very end. But just at the end, there's this long. Well, let me just give it to you. It begins with a moderato, which is pretty slow, actually. That's 17 minutes long. Then there's a largo after that. That's 11 minutes long. Then an allegro vivace. Yeah, vivace, 4 minutes. And then this finale, which is about 12 and a bit, 13 minutes long, which is also largo. And that rises to the most horripilating climax of all of them. And then all of a sudden it settles down and there's this transfigured finale, which is about half the movement. It's like 5 or 6 minutes of, with chimes and glowing luminous orchestration and a chorale that comes in with, and there's nothing tacky or sanctimonious about it at all. It's music of total, complete, utter sincerity, and you feel it immediately. There's no question about that. There's no opportunity to say, well, he's just, indulging in special effects, and now he's pulling out this stop, and now he's, doing this bit of kitsch. It's not like that at all. And this chorale it's bittersweet. It's very, very bittersweet. It rises to just an incandescent climax. And then the piece slowly dissolves to the highest harmonics on the cello, kind of like the end of, Shostakovich's second piano trio. After that disintegrates and then calms down. It's really just an extraordinary thing. It represents, as Schnittke himself basically indicated, his encounter with death and his moment of glimpsing something possibly on the other side. I don't know. It's just an amazing work, a truly amazing work. And it makes a fabulous coupling to the Kapustin, because these are two composers living in Moscow, two Russian composers. It shows the range of Russian contemporary music in the second half of the 20th century, after, the socialist realist stuff had sort of gone by the wayside. And I think it's just a marvelous sort of perspective on how two great composers responded to this sort of newfound freedom of composition, or somewhat anyway. I'm not going to get into the political end of it, and I don't even want to discuss it. Get it? Do not want to discuss it. I just want to listen. I just want to listen to this. I've been playing it over and over again for a couple of months now, because I just want to make sure that, I love it as much as I love it. And I do. I love it as much as I love it. And more than that, I really hope that Capriccio is able to do more with Kapustin, because no one else seems to want to. And they do such a great job of it. And there's so much of it there. I mean, the guy is a real find. So I'm hoping more will come. And the Schnittke is just fabulous. It's been recorded before, of course, but this is as fabulous a performance as any of them. It was premiered, by the way, by Natalia Gutman. It was written for her. And she's a superb cellist. So, I just think this disc is fantastic. And I want all of you to hear it. So keep on listening, friends. Thank you so much for joining me. Take care.